welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to be sharing with you guys my labor and delivery story. So yeah, if you guys see me looking down at my phone, it's because I don't want to forget or leave anything out. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get right into it. So on the 18th, I had my 39 weeks doctor's appointment, and prior to this doctor visit, the doctor had already told me that I was most likely going to have to get induced because I was not dilated. So that day was the final day for me to give him a decision and a date on what day I wanted to get induced. So since I wanted to, not get induced and have the baby naturally, we told him that we were going to wait it off. But the reason why I told him this was because I had in mind that I wanted to take the midwife's brew. I researched a lot about the midwife's brew, and supposedly for a lot of girls it worked, and I'm just gonna say that for me it didn't work. It did give me contractions, but it did not work. So I took the midwife's brew the 19th, May 19th. I took it around 2:30. It was like 2:30, between 2:30 and 3 o'clock. And I didn't feel anything, like any contractions, till about 5 to 6 hours after I took the midwife's brew. So after I took the midwife's brew, I was just doing everything regularly. I went on a walk, I ate, I just did everything completely normal because I didn't feel anything till about 5 or 6 hours after I took the brew. Once I went to bed, around 10:51 is when I started to feel tiny contractions, but they weren't that bad, they weren't consistent, so I honestly didn't think much of it. Around 12 p.m. is when I started to feel really bad contractions, so that's when I thought that it was the real deal, and they were very consistent. They hurt really bad. I stayed up all night. I think around 3 is when I finally decided to wake up my mom and tell her that I thought that I was going to go into labor. So during the whole night, I was having a lot of bloody discharge after I took the midwife's brew. So every time I would look up if that was normal, it said that that was actually a good sign that I was most likely going to go into labor. So around 4 a.m. is when I called my sister to come to the house because I was positive that I was going to go into labor. Before she got here, I got in the shower, and once I got out of the shower, my contractions completely stopped. I was not having any contractions whatsoever. So I ended up just taking a nap and sleeping till like 7 a.m. And when I woke up from this nap, it was already May 20th, so just to put that out there. So I went the whole day having tiny contractions. They would stop. I would have one every other hour, maybe every 45 minutes. They weren't strong. They were just all over the place. It was just a few pains here and there, but they were actual contractions. So finally around 1 is when my mom told me that we should probably call the doctor because I did have the bloody discharge and I was having contractions. So she said just to be safe that we should call him. We called him around 1:30, and he said that we should just go down to his office just to make sure that everything's all right. Once we got to the doctor, it was around like 2:30. And he put me on that monitor to check if I was having contractions. I was having tiny contractions, but I couldn't feel them. He could just see them on the monitor. The one thing that worried him was that he could not feel the baby moving. It was hard for him to find the heartbeat, so he said that we should head to the hospital and to see if I go into labor naturally. So we got to the hospital around 5:30. My sister dropped me off at the hospital, and they did the whole coronavirus test, which was very painful. Thankfully, it came out negative, but once they did that, they took us to our room. I think we got to our room around 6:30 because we were waiting for the test for a while. And once we got to the room, I changed, I got in my robe, I got in the bed, but that's when the nurse came in and she said that my doctor had actually instructed that I was going to get induced, and they were going to put a pill in my area, and then supposedly the contractions would start a few hours later. So I think this was around 7 or 7:30 when the nurse told me that my doctor had said that he wanted me to get induced. So she told me to actually get food before she did the whole thing. She put the pill in before I ate. So she told me to order the food and that I wouldn't have contractions, that this pill would just honestly take a long time, that I could be there for days, especially seeing how slow my body was going. I wasn't dilated. The only good thing that my body was doing and that the baby had done was that she was positioned down to come out. So that was the only good news and the only good signs that they were seeing. But other than that, I wasn't dilated at all. Yes, so she put the pill in around 7, and while I was eating, I started to get contractions, and the nurse had literally told me that I wasn't going to get any contractions. So once she came back, I asked her if that was normal, that it was working that fast. She said that it was normal, but that I would probably have contractions for a while before I went into actual labor. So after we ate, after my boyfriend and I ate, we were honestly just chilling. We were watching TV. I was having tiny contractions, nothing major. And around 9 or 9:30 is when my water broke, and the whole time I thought that I was peeing. When my boyfriend checked if I was quote-unquote peeing, it was like a big gush of water. And actually before my water broke, personally, I heard the pop. I know some people say that you don't hear a pop. I know that I did hear the pop, and then it was just like a big gush of water coming out, and it was very uncomfortable. I peed the whole bed. I actually had my robe on, and I had to take everything off, and I had like a robe, like a soft robe, and I had to take it off because I peed everything, because I wet everything, not because I peed everything. I meant because I wet everything. So once my water broke is when I felt that the contractions were getting a little bit more painful. They weren't as bad. When I really saw that they were getting very bad was around 12. Since the contractions were really bad, I decided that I would go on a walk. I tried walking, I tried bouncing on the ball, but honestly that didn't work for me. I felt like I felt the pressure more on my back and just all over my body when I was bouncing and walking. So for me, laying down was, I guess, more comfortable. It was around 12 when I really started to feel that the contractions were consistent and that they were hurting very bad. Around 1:30 in the morning, the nurse came back, and that's when she noticed that every time I would move, the baby would stop breathing. I'm not sure why this was. They actually didn't want to tell me. They didn't tell me till later on, but the nurses kept coming in and out to move the way that I was sleeping so that the baby could continue breathing. They actually didn't tell me this till after I had the baby because I guess they didn't want to stress me out. But since they kept coming in and out to change the way that I was sleeping, the way that I was moving, I kind of had an idea that something was going on. Sometimes the monitor would stop beeping, so I kind of just had an idea that something was up. So around 2 in the morning, I think it was like 2 in the morning, 2:30 in the morning is when I texted my mom and my sister that I couldn't take it anymore, that I was gonna get the epidural. So originally my plan was to not get the epidural. I didn't want to get it, and to this day I somewhat do regret getting it because I just feel like I chickened out. But I feel like if I would have gone into labor naturally, that I maybe could have gone longer without getting the epidural. I only went 6 hours with the pain, and I ended up getting the epidural. Once the nurse came in, that was honestly like the best thing ever. I felt like I had just seen an angel because I could not take the pain anymore. It was around 2 when the pain was so bad. Honestly, I think getting the epidural was one of the best decisions, but I do kind of regret it, but it did make everything go a little faster. I think if it wasn't for the epidural, I would have been there for a long time. Yeah, so I feel like the anesthesiologist took a while to get there, and she probably didn't. I was just in so much pain that I could not wait for her to get there. Once you get the epidural, it does take time for it to actually start working. So right after they put it in and they laid me down, I was still having major contractions. Finally, after 20-25 minutes, I stopped feeling the pain. I was still actually feeling pain. I'm not sure how the epidural works, but I know that like you can make the dose, or you can make the numbingness go higher. I really just don't know how that works, but I could still kind of feel the contractions. But later on that night, I know that I was feeling the contractions like completely, so they had to like make the epidural higher. Honestly, like I said, I don't know how that works, but they did add more medicine or whatever that could be a little bit more numb. Yeah, it was around 9 p.m. after my water had broke that they checked, and I was only, I think, 2 or 3 centimeters dilated. Then again, they checked around 3 in the morning, about an hour after, or an hour and a half after I got the epidural. I was actually 6 centimeters dilated, and that was honestly huge. I went from 2 to 3 centimeters to 6 centimeters. Once they checked, I kept asking the nurses if this was a good sign, if I was going to go into labor, and they said that once again, with the way that my body seems to be going, that it still might take a while, that they can't guarantee that I would be going into labor anytime soon. So once they checked me, my OBGYN was actually called in because of the fact that the baby was not breathing every time that I would get a contraction. So they actually made him come in just in case something were to happen. And also when he came in, he also checked that I was, 6 centimeters dilated. At 5 a.m., I felt the contractions get very bad. I was yelling very loudly. It was a lot of pain. I mainly felt the pain in my lower back. I felt like somebody was like ripping apart my back. It was so painful. I could not take the pain anymore. I was like telling the nurses that, the epidural wasn't working, and obviously it was, but I was getting closer to labor, little did I know. So yeah, at 5 in the morning, they checked me again, and I was 9 centimeters dilated. So when my doctor checked me, that was really fast, and he was really surprised that I went from 6 to 9, and that I was actually dilating really, really fast. After the doctor checked that I was 9 centimeters dilated, I ended up falling asleep, and they woke me up around 7 to check if I was dilated a little more, and I was actually 10 centimeters dilated at 7 in the morning. We started doing like a practice push type thing with the nurses. They had the baby's father kind of like helping me and stuff, and we were just doing like a practice run to see if I could do it, because I kept telling the nurses that I couldn't. I think this is something that they always do so that the process is a little faster. I started pushing at 7:36 in the morning. It was around like 7:45 or 7:50 when I actually had to stop pushing because the baby's head was completely down. This was really, really fast. They had to call my doctor in. Once the doctor came in order for me not to tear and for anything to go wrong, I had to wait, and that was probably really painful because if you guys have ever been in labor, you just kind of want to push. It feels like you have to use the bathroom, so all you want to do is push the baby out. Once her head was in that position for me to like push her out, it was a lot of pressure, but finally at 8:04 my baby was born. And yeah, that was probably the most beautiful experience, and if I could go back and experience it again with my daughter, I honestly would. And yeah, if you guys are interested in seeing a few clips, I do have a vlog from the day that I did give birth to my daughter, so you guys can watch that.